The MotoGP world was once again rocked by a bombshell statement. Marco Bezzecchi's honest confession thrust Marc Márquez into the centre of controversy. Marquez was accused of forcing Valentino Rossi's students to hate him. This accusation was debunked by Bezzecchi's confession, which opened old wounds that had long been tightly sealed within the paddock. Is the hatred for Marquez truly Rossi's ideological legacy? Or is it just a poisonous myth deliberately perpetuated to fuel psychological warfare in MotoGP? Let's discuss it. The idea that Rossi's students must hate Marquez has become a persistent myth in MotoGP. This narrative stems from the long, painful rivalry between Rossi and Marquez, which began in the controversial 2015 season and divided the paddock. This conflict is ingrained in the collective memory of fans. Consequently, every rider born through the VR46 Academy is often subjected to the assumption that if you're a Rossi student, you're automatically anti-Marquez. It's as if hatred were part of the unwritten curriculum. However, modern MotoGP is slowly dismantling this notion. Riders in the midst of competition are demonstrating a far more mature attitude than public perception suggests. The 2025 season provides a vivid example of how rivalries can remain fierce on the track, yet healthy and dignified off the track. Marco Bezzecchi is one of the names most frequently associated with this narrative. As Valentino Rossi's protégé, the Rimini-born rider was once in direct conflict with Marc Márquez. The incident at the 2023 Valencia Grand Prix marked the most heated moment in their relationship. Bezzecchi fell after colliding with Marquez and publicly expressed his anger. "No one can touch him because he's Marc Márquez. He's the dirtiest rider in MotoGP," Bezzecchi declared at the time. His harsh statement immediately sparked widespread debate and reinforced the long-standing stigma that the Rossi-Marquez conflict was being passed down to the next generation. However, Bezzecchi's reaction felt very human when viewed in the context of the time. He was in the early stages of his MotoGP career and under immense pressure to compete against one of the most aggressive riders in Premier Class history. His status as Rossi's protégé led the public to quickly conclude that this was not just a racing incident, but rather a continuation of the long-standing rivalry between the two riders. Time passed, and Bezzecchi matured. He didn't dwell on that emotional moment. As he gained experience, his perspective on the rivalry changed significantly. The 2025 season was a pivotal point in his career. Riding for Aprilia Racing, Bezzecchi emerged as one of the main protagonists amidst the dominance of Marc Márquez and Alex Marquez. He was recognised as the first rider to disrupt the Marquez brothers' dominance. His duels with Marc Márquez on the track were tight, fierce, and intense, pushing each other to the limit. However, their interactions off the track revealed a different facet of the rivalry. In a reaction video posted by the official MotoGP Instagram account, Bezzecchi responded to a comment on the ex-MotoGP account that insinuated it was a Marquez fan account. In a casual tone, he said, "No, it's not really like that." It was a brief statement that carried a lot of meaning. Bezzecchi no longer sees everything through an emotional lens. The most symbolic moment occurred after the Hungarian Grand Prix, when Bezzecchi and Marquez shared the podium. Bezzecchi was seen drinking champagne offered by Marquez, the rider who had just beaten him. Afterward, the two had a light conversation without any tense gestures or excessive distance. It was then that Bezzecchi made a surprising statement to many fans. "We're not close friends, but I like Marquez. I hope he likes me too." Though simple, this statement clearly signalled that Bezzecchi had put the rivalry in its proper place. This maturity was evident when the situation was reversed. At the Indonesian Grand Prix, when Marc Márquez crashed after colliding with Bezzecchi, the latter immediately apologised, doing so more than once, including when they met face-to-face at the side of the track. Marquez's response was equally mature. He openly asked his fans not to attack Bezzecchi. This confirmed that both riders understood the difference between racing incidents and personal conflicts. Recalling the heated incident in Valencia, Bezzecchi admitted that his reaction at the time was unwise. "Maybe I wasn't as mature in the past as I am now," he said after the San Marino Grand Prix. He also emphasised that such rivalry wasn't exclusive to him and Marquez. He's a rival. We're not best friends, but ultimately, that's the case with all MotoGP riders. Now, we have a good relationship, we respect each other, and we have great races. If Bezzecchi is an example of change and maturity, then Francesco Bagnaia is an example of consistency. As Rossi's most successful student, Bagnaia is often considered Rossi's MotoGP successor. However, he was the one who clearly conveyed to the public that hatred is not part of VR46's philosophy. Bagnaia never concealed the fact that Marc Márquez is a formidable rival on the track. He consistently emphasised, however, that he never framed the rivalry as personal animosity. For Bagnaia, true competition must be based on mutual respect. There's great respect between Marc and me, and that must remain the case, he said in several interviews, demonstrating his maturity in approaching competition at the highest level of MotoGP. Furthermore, Bagnaia openly acknowledged Marquez's extraordinary abilities and used him as his primary benchmark. Marquez is one of the strongest riders in MotoGP history. Facing him forces me to constantly raise my level, he said. For the world champion, Marquez's presence isn't a personal threat that fuels hatred. Rather, it's a professional challenge that forces him to develop, work harder, and push his own limits every season. When asked about the Rossi-Marquez rivalry, Bagnaia prefers to focus on the present. What happened in the past is part of MotoGP history. Now, we live in our own era, he said, confirming that he doesn't feel obligated to inherit a conflict that isn't his. What Bezzecchi and Bagnaia demonstrated reflects a major shift in the new generation's outlook on MotoGP. They remain aggressive on the track and hungry for victory, but they don't let hatred fuel them. Being Rossi's students doesn't mean they have to be hostile toward Marquez. Rossi didn't pass on revenge to his students, but rather a champion's mentality, the courage to compete, and a love for racing itself. Ultimately, the idea that Rossi's students must hate Marquez exists more in social media comment sections than in the MotoGP paddock. The facts on the track tell a different story. Marco Bezzecchi and Pecco Bagnaia have shown that rivalry can be fierce, intense, and uncompromising, yet dignified. Ultimately, Bezzecchi's honest confession and Bagnaia's consistent stance have debunked a major MotoGP myth. Hatred for Marc Márquez is neither destiny nor a sacred legacy from Valentino Rossi. The rivalry still burns on the track, the duels remain brutal, and the pressure remains intense. But the new generation proves that war doesn't have to be fueled by revenge. Will we perpetuate the old narrative of hatred for sensationalism's sake? Or will we accept the harsh reality that Marquez has elevated the entire paddock, including Rossi's disciples? Are you ready to admit it? Share your thoughts below